Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Penn Nursing StorySlam. I'm Marion Leary, Director of Innovation at Penn Nursing. Together with you for the fifth time, sharing stories from our Penn Nursing students, faculty, alumni, and Penn Medicine clinicians. Stories which are centered around the theme of perseverance, doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Perseverance is a state of being for healthcare providers and patients alike, as well as really humans in general. And tonight, you will hear stories from 7 Penn Nursing storytellers on how they've moved forward in spite of and because of difficulty, persisting, learning, and adapting. Our storytellers have worked hard over the past 7 weeks, writing and rewriting their stories, practicing, and getting sage feedback from my friend and colleague, Dr. Neil Bardhan from First Person Arts. First Person Arts is a Philadelphia-based nonprofit that celebrates the power of the personal. Neil will be emceeing this event for us tonight. And new this year, I'm excited for you to hear from our special guest storyteller, Kelli Dunham. Kelli is a community health nurse, author, and trauma-informed stand-up comic dedicated to making a difference in healthcare by leveraging the transformative power of humor and storytelling. We're so honored to have Kelli with us tonight sharing her story. A few quick thank yous before I hand it over to Neil, though. This event would not be possible without the support of our Penn Nursing alumni, Sandy Sandberg, and her husband, Joe Sandberg. Additionally, each of our storytellers will receive this nifty 3D printed microphone as a way to remember the event tonight. I'd like to thank our colleagues at the Penn Biotech Commons 3D Printing Lab for supporting this event each year. Finally, to our storytellers, this event literally would not happen without you, so thank you for all of your hard work and persistence in crafting your stories to share with us. I know you are all going to smash it tonight. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Neil.
Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm really pleased to be in conversation with you again. So yes, I'm Neil Bardhan. I'm the Director of Applied Storytelling at First Person Arts, based here in Philadelphia. First Person Arts helps individuals, groups, and organizations develop true personal stories into art for the stage, the page, on air, online, and for personal growth. We do this because true stories have the power to connect us. This is our 5th Penn Nursing StorySlam, and I'm very excited for tonight's show. This event means a lot to me. It always has, and it means a lot to my colleagues as well at First Person Arts. And I'm honored to be here with the storytellers and with you, our audience members, signing in from wherever you're signing in. If you wouldn't mind, drop a note in the chat function of your platform and just say where in the world you're tuning in from. We would love to see that. So what's going to happen is I'll introduce each storyteller. They'll share their story, as you might imagine. Then after that, I'll chat with them for a minute to learn a little bit more about their process and experience. So that's how the night is going to go. But before we get going, I'm very excited to bring to the stage Kelli Dunham. Kelli Dunham is a really funny person. She's a stand-up comic, an RN, an author, a storyteller, and an ex-nun. Kelli, welcome to stage.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Neil. I appreciate it. I'm super excited about this. I've been talking about it so much that one of my friends, I've sent them the link just now, and they were like, "Oh, Kelli, are you doing the Penn Nursing Slam? Really?" I've been talking about it nonstop, so I'm super, super excited to have kind of like two places where my heart overlaps with storytelling and nursing. When my partner Heather was very ill with advanced ovarian cancer, she woke me up one night. It's like 3 a.m. standing beside our bed, fully dressed in a skirt, a fancy hat, and her signature orange feather boa. She was yelling or pleading. I don't know, yelling, pleading. "You've got to accept help. Promise me you'll accept help." My first thought, switching from partner mode into registered nurse mode, was what was this bizarre medication interaction? She was on a lot of beds to combat nausea and pain and fatigue, but what would cause this particular mix of manic energy, earnest emotional persistence, and ambitious wardrobe choices? My second thought was, what on earth is she talking about? I had been sleeping. I didn't need help sleeping. Did she mean the next day when we had friends over for dinner that I should let them help cook? Despite at that time, I was living in the crunchy granola capital of Portland, Oregon, in a converted Hare Krishna temple, no less. It was partly converted. My Midwest roots sometimes poke through. The next day I was serving meatloaf. I was pretty sure I could handle putting together a meatloaf. I raised an eye and pointed towards her outfit. I got dressed because this is an important conversation. As if that explained it. When I'm dead, promise me you'll accept help. So the timing of this conversation was new and I have to say kind of surprising. But the conversation, argument almost, was not new. Heather was referring to my other remnant of my stoic Germanic meatloaf-infused Midwestern childhood, my inability to accept help for anything big or small. I'd say, I'm a nurse. We're helpers, not helpees. Everyone knows that. And Heather would say, really, everyone? That sounds lonely and also not true. If nurses never accept help, how does one nurse by themselves pull up patients in bed? I mean, the draw sheet, right? But she did have a point. It seemed like a separate argument, or at least a separate issue. So she pivoted to saying, just take off your nurse cap. Oh, I corrected her. Nurses have not worn caps for decades. They're unsanitary and also they get caught in the IV tubing. She was like, okay, well, take off your metaphorical nurse cap and let people help you. People like to help. Heather was a person with a lot of opinions. I called her my queen, and that was lovingly, not facetiously. But I still guess with all these exasperating arguments, she must have felt like she wasn't actually making any progress. Hence, I guess, dramatic middle of the night announcement. What I thought was like a medication interaction was actually an intervention. And then she started poking me with each word a poke. Promise me you'll accept help. Let people help you. People like to help. And I was giggling and trying to move away because, poking. But she was unrelenting, and finally I agreed. When somebody you love is dying, you say yes a lot. We'd had home hospice care for, I think, a month at that time. And some days it seemed really like Heather had a few more months to live, but then her physical condition really began to decline. The next week after this conversation I just described, I called Heather from the grocery store and I said, hey, can I bring you anything? She thought for a minute and said, how about a 1/4 pound of the will to live? I took a breath and I said, honey, I'm at Trader Joe's and you know how they are. They only had organic and now they're all out. She said, dang, I had a coupon too. Heather had already made inquiries about using the Oregon medical aid in dying, what we used to call assisted suicide provision, to hasten her death. But that week, she began the multi-step, complicated approval process in earnest, explaining she was tired and done. But the next Tuesday at 7:30 a.m., everything was in place, and Heather wanted to die surrounded by love, and so half of queer Portland was at her house. One of her friends had flown in from San Francisco, and another friend promptly arrived at 8:02 a.m., clad in thigh-high leather boots for the occasion. Her ex-lovers, I think every single one of her ex-lovers were there, as well as her biological sisters. And for some reason, maybe because it was Portland, her massage therapist, who I called Woo Woo Carla, she liked to talk about organic kale, and she kept insisting that our cat was doing energy work for us. I was impressed, but not surprised that so many people were willing to be part of this queer death circus. Heather was loved by so many people, and she let people love and help her. Even the medical aid in dying liaison from the local hospital made a house call for the occasion. And she sat on our purple leopard print couch, surrounded by paperwork, in her Ann Taylor suit and full face of makeup, looking, to her great credit, as if this were all very customary. And this was the third partly converted Hare Krishna temple full of queer characters she'd been to just that morning. We had a goodbye circle then, and Heather took each of us behind a curtain around the bed for cuddling and private goodbyes. And being Heather, she also, of course, gave us some unsolicited advice about how we should run our lives. She told me that I should, of course, learn how to accept help, But she also suggested that I should try on my clothes before I buy them. Something about them fitting better that way. At Heather's request, I prepared the IV Zofran that she would need to keep down the lethal oral medication. I started singing the Snoopy song. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. It was goofy, but it was something we associated with happier times. But my voice was shaking. She said, "You know you're doing that for you, right? You know I'm okay?" Heather's friend Kina had bravely offered to be the person who put together the lethal concoction. The instructions, and this is the instructions they sent out from the experts on the medical aid in dying process, say you're supposed to put it in applesauce or water for best absorption. Heather had other plans. The last taste in my mouth is not going to be applesauce. So we mixed it in Heather's chosen medium, Cozy Shack chocolate pudding. As I handed Kina the spoon, I said, "This has got to work or she is definitely going to kill us." Kina and I went behind the curtain. Kina handed the bowl full of pudding and seconal to Heather. Heather ate what was inside of it. She died. It was terrible. And even though every single moment of her death had been planned, I was still really, really surprised. I was surprised by how gone she felt and how alone I felt. So I sat by her bedside and cried for a little bit. And then I had heard our friends crying and talking quietly outside the curtain. And I thought about what I'd promised Heather. And I thought about how she lived her life. And so I took my pillow, my Snoopy pillow, and lifted up her head and put it underneath. And then I kissed her softly on the forehead. I said, "Okay, let people help you, Kelli. People like to help." And I walked out from behind the curtain into a massive group hug, into the arms of people who loved me. And yes, very much wanted to help. Thank you.
Oh, Kelli, that was fabulous. Thank you so much. That touched on a lot of things that I wasn't expecting. I really appreciate how it's all tied together. Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is, how did you first come to bring this story to stage, to public generally, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I was a comic before Heather died, and there was a point in which she was trying to decide if she was going to try another round of chemo, and I said, like, and she was like, I just think I'm done. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I thought you were going to keep trying different kinds of chemo till till they found a cure." Joking, kind of, but not really. And she said, "No, I thought." And you would live forever. And she said, "No, I thought you were going to write a story about my life and run around telling it, and I would live forever." And I was like, "Okay, point taken." So I always had that idea. She was very much a diva. She was a burlesque performer. She actually started the Fat Bottom Review, which was like one of the first, larger size burlesque troupes. And that was something that she wanted, right? Like she died at 38. You're barely starting, at 38. And so that was something very much she wanted. I did not know if comedy about this would work. And I would say
Right.
there were moments when it did not work, especially in very early grief when I was so raw.
Mhm.
But I feel like this is what humor is for, to talk about these really difficult things,
Cool. That tees me up really nicely for my next thing, which is, I commented on your bio earlier, and you have these various identities, hats, professional experiences. How have your, various titles and experiences in those worlds of of faith and medicine and so on, and art. How have those informed your understanding of healing?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like sometimes press folks will be like, "How did you go from being a nun to a queer nurse?" And I was like, "That's not
Yeah.
even a right turn. That is just like the logical progression of things, to me." And one of the great things about being a nurse is I felt like, I went to nursing school,
Sure.
nursing school at Drexel. It was essentially a second career, right? And it really made the difference for me between, like, it was such a gift to me, right? It was like a way to help other people, but it was also such a gift to me. It made a huge difference in income. It made a huge difference in knowing that I had kind of a specific place in a specific profession. I feel so proud of being a nurse. Um, so I feel like it's that cyclical nature, right? And this is the thing. I have a show called Second Helping, which is all about learning how to accept help, right?
Yeah.
It's partly this story. And the whole thing is that there's no one, it's not about whether you're a helper or a helpee. It's that we are all both at different times, right? And so that it's cyclical. Like healing, I can do something to heal you, but you can also do something to heal me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw your website up on the screen, and I know you have some upcoming projects that you want to tell people about, but maybe without giving too much away of that show, who has helped you?
Community. That is,
Yeah.
Dorothy Day said, "We have all known the long loneliness, and the answer is love, and that love is found in community." And, more than anything else, I always say like that is, that is really where my heart is. So.
All right. Kelli, anything else to throw in for the folks at home?
No, I do have this show. It's called Second Helping. Two dead lovers, dead funny. I don't like to surprise people with what the show is about, so there you have it. But it's also about learning how to
Quite a
accept.
title. Quite a title there, I gotta say.
Yeah, I did it in Edinburgh, and that was like kind of walking up the street, handing people flyers with that title. It was challenging. I have to say, it was challenging. But I also have there's going to be 3 shows in New York and 1 virtually, and the theater gave me a code for people who are at this show to get a $5 off the virtual or the in-person, but mostly it's going to be a virtual. And I'll put that, I guess, in the YouTube comments.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. Kelli, thank you so much for being part of tonight. Really appreciated getting to hear your story, getting to be in conversation with you. And we're going to move on to the other storytellers of the evening. I am so pleased. I've met most of these storytellers just about a month and a half ago. Got to sit with them in a workshop setting and tease out what are the stories that they're bringing, how do we develop them. This is a big part of the work that I do in my role at First Person Arts, where I'm the director of applied storytelling, and just feel so fortunate that Marion and colleagues get to bring the people that they know from the Penn nursing world over to me for a couple hours a year. So yes, we are going to move right along to our first storyteller of the Penn nursing set. This person, she's an undergraduate student at Penn Nursing. I'm really excited for you to hear your story. Please welcome to the stage, Maddie Brunson. Take it away, Maddie.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I first want to ask, how many of you are runners? I've been an athlete to some degree all my life, and recently I've been trying to run a half marathon, which on paper doesn't seem like a lot, but I think if you measured it by how many times the song Need to Know by Doja Cat could fit in the time needed to run one, it would be like 34 times? That's not bad. I can listen to that song 34 times. My uncle, Jeremy, told me he listens to Doja Cat when he runs. Now, I'll never be able to imagine this 52-year-old something man running down the street listening to Doja Cat, but he claims that the tempo of her songs is perfect for the pace he needs to keep when he runs. I decided to start running for my health, but with him, he's running from someone we all know as nurses and healthcare providers. It was the summer after my sophomore year of high school, and I was melting into my couch. I was watching the fan blades spin around on the ceiling, trying to distract myself from the fact that every fiber of my body was sweating. Summers in Dallas are not something to be reckoned with. My mom walks up to me. She says he hasn't answered his phone in 2 weeks. I sighed and I told her I'd go pack a bag. My uncle's silence was concerning, as his battle with alcoholism and addiction is something that he has struggled with since 16, which was my age at the time. We drove off in my mom's red Volvo. It's a little past dinner time and the summer sun is setting, and it takes about 4 hours to get from Dallas to Houston. My uncle lived in Houston at the time, in the home of my great deceased aunt. Her home echoed when you talked, and you could hear your own bones creaking when you walked. The house was built like a museum, not a home. Once we're out of the city, we drove to the parts of the state where there's nothing but Waffle Houses and Jesus Save signs. I couldn't remember if my uncle believed in God or not. And with my head out the window, I watched the sky turn from orange to purple into black. And I typically enjoy this drive, but this time I didn't know what I was driving into, so I grew anxious as I saw the Houston skyline appearing in the front windshield. We pulled up to the house. The rubber tires of the car crunched on the front driveway, and we left our bags in the car, walked up to the front door, and I watched my mom's hand hover over that front door handle. And I felt like I was living in this liminal space. With my uncle, he's constantly living in the space between relapse and recovery and life and death. We walked slowly throughout the house, calling out his name at each step. Jeremy! Nothing. Jeremy! Silence. Jeremy! No response. We found our way to the living room, and I see a pair of feet sticking out from behind the couch, and I run to them. And Jeremy lay incapacitated in a pool of his own blood, vomit, and urine. His chest slowly rose and fell, his eyes fluttered open and shut, and his mouth was able to mumble out a few indiscernible words. I picked my head up, and I looked around the living room, and I saw that the room was lined with bottles of liquor. He was caged by his disease, literally trapped by the very thing he was trying so very hard to fight. He was able to sit himself up on the couch. He was disheveled, pale, and shaky. And with the closest hospital only a few blocks away, we decided to drive him ourselves. As we carried him to the car, the weight of what he had been struggling with weighed heavy on my shoulders, and it was one of the heaviest things I have ever had to carry. We started the drive to the hospital. I watched him from the rearview mirror, his tired eyes looking at the passing buildings. He knew where we were taking him to. Again. By the end of it, Jeremy's blood alcohol was 0.4, so 40% of his blood was alcohol. Death was living in that house. Death's icy hands dragged across those 70 bottles of alcohol that he had consumed over 2 weeks. Death's long black coat was draped over that couch that Jeremy was just sitting on. My uncle has known death for a long time, constantly trying to decide whether to run from death or run straight into death's open arms. My mother and I had never given up on him, despite the fact that he had given up on himself for decades. What I have learned from caring for my uncle is something I integrate into my ideas of patient care as an undergrad. When a patient is lost in their illness, we are the ones that have to be their guiding light. We must look past the fog of doubt, frustration, and fear by using a lantern of empathy, determination, and patience. We have been called to protect the tenderness of the human soul from the claws of death. And I'm graced with gratitude that I get to be a protector, a guide, and a healer. The last time I spoke with my uncle, he sent me a message saying Doja Cat was coming to Philly. Now, as a broke college student, I couldn't afford the tickets. But instead, I ran that day to the songs of Doja Cat. As my feet pounded the pavement, I hoped one day he would stop running from his disease and instead just run to the beat of Doja Cat. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Really, really appreciate you kicking things off tonight. And I know we had some conversations during the workshop, and you have some really wonderful stories to share already early in your career. Say a little bit more. What was it like putting the story about your dear family members together for a scenario like tonight's?
I think that since I have experienced this for a long time, whether it be this scenario or other ones, that I have a really good picture of how to tell someone's story like this that has been fighting with addiction and alcoholism for so long, that I'm able to show the light in a scenario like this through the lens of not only a family member, but also a future nurse. So I think it's really special that I got to be able to tell this story and let other people see and relate to a situation where someone's struggling with addiction, as the rates are rising across the country and world. So yeah.
Cool. I really appreciate that you're using it as an opportunity to look forward in your own career, and look forward for society at large, right? Not just yourself.
Yeah.
All right, Maddie, thank you so much.
Thank
Pleasure
you.
having you as part of this. And folks, just acknowledging what I have up on the screen. If you want to learn more about Penn Nursing Innovation, there's a website on your screen. You can pull it up in a tab and look at it later, because now we're hearing stories. Our next storyteller is a Penn Nursing graduate student. Really pleased that you get to hear his story. Please welcome Alfredo Sigisi.
Thank you, Neil. 23rd of December, 1993, I walked through Manila International Airport in the Philippines, excited to be in my first plane ride to the United States. Destination, Newark, New Jersey. Finally made it and heading my way to the land of milk and honey. You see, I originally didn't get into nursing because of a noble cause, but largely because of promise of upward mobility and economic reasons. My parents, who were both barely had some formal schooling, struggled to get by taking care of 6 children. Myself being the second to the youngest, but instilled in us the value of education for a better life and better future. Growing up in not a lot, which is an understatement, when you get to a point where you're given a choice of bread or rice for breakfast because you can't have both, you certainly realize that struggle is real. And yet, my parents ensured we are fed, bathed, clothed, and out the door to school every day. So here I am, arriving in the United States of America with $100 in my pocket, middle of winter, no winter jacket, no winter shoes, excitedly embarking to start my nursing career. Of course, everything started off perfectly, or not. I got stranded in Newark International Airport overnight because of winter storm. Just have enough coins to call on payphone for my pickup and left a message on answering machine. Uncertain if somebody will show up from my agency. Not sure what the living conditions be like, and not even sure if I got a job. So the first few years was a hodgepodge of exciting experiences, bloopers, and reality checks. There was a point when my working visa was about to expire, no sponsor in sight, and on the brink of not legal status. I had to couch surf at a newly found cousin in the Bronx and let me stay in their living room while studying for the board and worked under the table when time allows. I couldn't and wouldn't go back home, as it will mean that my return is uncertain. And when my working visa finally made it through, it means I have to stay put for 4 to 5 years for my green card and will not be able to see my parents and family. Homesickness sets in, and multiple times I caught myself half asleep and thought I am hearing noises from back home of children playing and people talking. And when I looked at the window, the street is empty and quiet, full of parked cars. But I survived. Some coworkers and friends when I used to live in the Bronx taught me how to walk with a swagger and to make sure I have a mug money always available in my pocket. So if anybody approached me for money, I have a dollar or $5 bill readily available to hand over. And luckily, I don't have to use any of them because I look like Jackie Chan and seem to know karate, as mentioned by a fellow passenger on the subway one time, asking me to show him some karate moves. This deranged dude, by the way, pulled the emergency brake on the subway, and we walked the tracks to the nearest station to get out. Nice view from the subway tracks, by the way. But I survived. I survived all of this with the help from a community that became my family away from home. Yes, I am off to a great start in a new country, new weather, and getting used to using English as my primary language of communication. The language? That's a hurdle on its own. Even if English is our language of instruction in the Philippines, it still takes a bit of adjustment, a lot of adjustment. I remember having a conversation with a coworker and I have to pause at one time longer than I should because I am translating in my head what I needed to say, and she was looking at me baffled because she can see in my face that I want to say something, but no words coming out of my mouth. I can see in her expression the encouragement to please say something. And when I finally did, it's like having a conversation in slow motion as I am trying to translate what I wanted to say word for word, which a lot of times resulted in having some lost in translation moments. For example, for the longest time, for a while, when somebody greets me, "What's up?" I really thought the person is asking, "Is there anything up there?" And I will physically look up and try to answer the question. But before I can answer, the person already walked away. Or when I used to work in a nursing home, and a resident will say, "I lost my pocketbook," I will ask, "What's the title of your pocketbook?" Growing up, pocketbook is a literal book that fits in your pocket, sort of paper mills. Here's another one. A doctor walked by the nurse's station and asked, "Have you seen John?" And the Filipino nurse said, "Yes, he just passed away," meaning he was just here and walked away. But of course, with practice, we get better. I think I got better a little bit. I still mix my B's and V's. Actually, just this Tuesday, I did a presentation at Princeton Medical Center. At the beginning, I thought it was clever to say, "Don't you know that you are the only hospital in the US that has double IB on its name?" Positive look from the audience, and I said, "Penn and Princeton, both Ivy League?" And someone said, "Oh, Ivy League." And I thought, that's what I said. Or, mixing my P's and F's, I mistakenly pronounced post anesthesia care unit, or PACU, one time to a nursing supervisor in front of a PAC. I have to say that slowly. PAC nurses station one time, and sounds like I'm cursing at her. Needless to say, I never called post anesthesia care unit by its acronym again. But I survived and will continue surviving. So the adjustment in getting used to the language and the adjustment to working environment in foreign land, which I now call home, is nothing compared to what my parents endured to provide for me and my siblings, especially to support us with some education, to move ahead and to move forward, education they never had. They even agreed to send me to University of Santo Tomas, which is considered one of the most elite education institutions in the country. When they work every day, year after year, with barely any time off to attend any school activities, so my siblings and I can stay in school, I'm still amazed on how they did it. For their perseverance, I am forever grateful. My name is Alfredo Sagisi, proud Filipino nurse and prouder son of late Manuel and Margarita Gorospe Sagisi. Thank you.
Oh, Alfredo, just fabulous. It gets me every time that I hear this from you. So I really appreciate that. You do a really nice job in your story of stringing together these lost in translation moments. And you have some quite literal ones of lost in translation or pronunciation, many of which are familiar to people who've experienced multiple linguistic environments, myself included. But you also alluded to an incident that I'm going to call kind of a lost in culture translation, which is somebody on the train said you looked like Jackie Chan. Can you say a
Yes,
little bit more about
yeah.
what happened here?
It's funny. We were just standing in there. He was standing next to me. I tried to look up him, and he was said, "Do you know this? Do you know this?" Like trying to do karate. And he asked me, "Can you show me a high kick? Can you do that?" And I actually told him, "You know what? In the Philippines, phys ed, karate is our phys ed," which I was lying. Uh, but yeah, and he just walked away. And I guess he got bored of me, and he decided to pull that emergency brake on the subway. The better part is we were able to see the view of New York on the subway track going to the next subway station.
Wow. Yeah, that's a whole other story right there. It sounds like.
Yeah,
Wow. That took some turns that I wasn't expecting.
yeah.
Love it. Cool. Alfredo, thank you so much for being part of this. Really a pleasure getting to know you. Great. Moving right along. And we're going to bring in Kathleen Teresi. Hi, Kathleen. Great to have you on. Don't forget to unmute yourself. There you go. Kathleen's a Penn Nursing retired instructor and also an alum. Take it away, Kathleen.
Thank you. In my line of work, success takes many forms. It's not always obvious. Sometimes all you know is that you kept a kid safe. There were never nurses at the Philadelphia Child Welfare Department, and I thought that was wrong. So in 2006, my nursing partner and I founded Child Health Consultants. We wanted our nurses to be in the field, visiting families who had been reported, working with the high-risk teams, especially with children and families where there were multiple medical issues. Our nurses could visit as often as they needed, not following what is prescribed by the medical insurance model. And our nurses bridge the gaps between the healthcare providers, social workers, and families. We often received a referral from Children's Hospital. They had a practice of making a report for a child who had 3 admissions for diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA. That's a very serious complication of diabetes when there is no insulin in the body to transport glucose around. JK was admitted to the hospital in DKA. He had a change in his mental status and a serious elevated blood sugar. The report alleged that he had a mother who used substances, was truant, as well as with his siblings being truant, and that he was mostly in charge. So, my first visit, I knocked on the door. JK opened the door, but did not meet my gaze. I asked for his mom. I heard from upstairs, "I'm too busy to visit with you. It's his disease that got the damn report. You visit with him." Okay, baby steps, I said to myself. I'll give her a call tomorrow and we'll talk about how important she is in supervising and supporting him. So I followed him into the kitchen. What a mess I found. Dishes all over the place, food on the walls and the floors, empty cans of open food. I was a little bit nervous about talking to him as I watched his eyes dart around, watching his younger siblings and chastising them. "Tell me about your diabetes. Is it difficult for you to manage?" "No," he said, "it's fine." "Okay, then, can you please get your supplies?" He disappeared for about 10 minutes, and when he came back, he had only the bare necessities, no emergency supplies. He had a glucometer, which is that little instrument where you measure blood sugars. He had insulin and syringes, nothing to test his urine to see if he was going into DKA or to give him if he had very low blood sugar. I looked at his glucometer and he only had 2 readings from the last 2 weeks. He should be testing 4 times a day. "How about if you test now?" I asked. He tested, and of course, he was very high. "Okay, what do you think we should do now?" I asked. "Well, I know I need to take insulin. I don't know how much. I know I need to drink water. I can't test for diabetic ketoacidosis because I don't have my supplies." "Okay, well, let's start with the insulin." And I helped him figure out how much he should take. So I went to the stairs and called up to Mom to let her know about this elevated blood sugar and to ask about his supplies. She answered, "I don't have a car. I don't know when I'm going to get there. You have a car." "Okay," I said, "how about if I go get the supplies?" And I left. When I arrived back at the home, JK and his mom met me at the door, and it was clear my visit was over for today. The next morning, I shared with the social worker my concerns. She said, "Well, Mom told me he just ends up in the hospital because he eats candy." "No," I said, "he ends up in the hospital because he's not getting his insulin. He doesn't make insulin." We agreed to meet the following day so I could do a little diabetic teaching. I called the school nurse who didn't know him, and I tried Mom several times. No answer. So I went back to the house at 5:00. When I arrived, JK opened the door and walked away. I saw Mom was asleep on the couch, so I asked, "Can you wake your mom up, please?" He tried really hard. He shook her and yelled her name. I was starting to panic, and I could see he was. But then she finally opened her eyes, but was clearly incoherent and fell back into a sleep. Is there an adult who might come and stay, I asked, while your mom's not feeling well? No, he said, I can handle this. No, I need to let the social worker know. So I called the social worker who agreed to come out. He decided he would call his father to come and get the kids, but not him, he made it clear. When he was talking to his dad, I could hear his dad yelling at him. And when he hung up, he was near tears. Okay, I said, I'll read to your siblings while you gather their things. When the social worker arrived and saw Mom, she told him he needed to leave as well. So we called his grandmother. Grandmother was very nervous. I never took care of a kid with diabetes, she said. I told her I would be there this evening and we would do Diabetes 101, which we did for several hours that evening. I visited daily and she had my phone number, and I began to see some changes. Grandma and I had to work to teach an adolescent boy that he was worthy of having an adult take care of him, that he could be a kid. He was worried for his mom, mad at his mom, worried about his siblings, and mad at his dad. We enlisted the help of the psychologist in the endocrine clinic. And then after about a month, I began to see this adolescent boy shine. He was taking part in his care. He was going to school. He was feeling a lot better. After about 2 months of visits, I told him, you don't need me to visit anymore. He balked. No, you can keep coming. I think he liked having the attention. However, I agreed we would text with one another. So we did for several weeks. And you remember I said, success comes in many forms. I remember the last text. Miss Kathy, the diabetic nurse says, my sugar is in control and I'm doing real well. Thank you. Can't hear you.
There we go. So many buttons to click in the modern era. Kathleen, thank you so much for bringing that to everybody. I know I've had the privilege of reading that and hearing that from you over the past couple of weeks. Something that you mentioned is that you experienced, I don't know if you said you saw changes in the grandmother of JK. And I'm curious what those interactions looked like between you two. You know, were you explicitly coaching her on how to make sure that he felt valued, or was it a slower burn? Yeah, tell us more.
No, I was coaching her on diabetes. She
Okay.
was a person who understood what a young man needed, but so terrified that his blood sugars would go high or low and she wouldn't know what to do. And so I kept coaching her, talking to her on the phone, sending texts back and forth with her. And she became more and more comfortable in that care. The love was already there. I didn't have to work on that.
Okay, great. One other thought is kind of Diabetes 101. Did you feel like you had that script ready to go, or were you creating that lecture and practicum on the fly for her?
I was creating the lecture on the fly, although in my line of work, lots of children didn't always stay with their parents. And even if they did stay with their parents, their parents didn't always understand how significant the care needs are. Yeah. And so I would try to fine tune it depending on what I saw the adult was able to manage.
Love that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. Yeah. I just want to take a quick minute and acknowledge all the wonderful things that are happening in the chats across the platforms. Got a couple hundred people tuned in from all over the place. A lot of folks from Texas, a lot of people from the Philly area. Saw somebody from, I've already lost it in the thread, but I want to say one of the maritime provinces in Canada. Very exciting. There's a couple other things I just want to pull up because I can. Random stuff with Lily says, this is in response to Alfredo's story, right? Once I said I twisted my uncle, and I meant to say I twisted my ankle. People looked at me with utter disbelief. That's a really great substitution to make. And people, Dean Tony says, loved your story. And it is right after Alfredo's, and what a tribute to your family. Indeed. Let's see here. Yeah, we just have a lot of really great accolades for our storytellers this evening from across the folks watching around the world. And great. All right, we are going to roll right along, and I'm just going to bring this one up because it really touched me. That just brought tears to my eyes, says Teresa. What a wonderful story of redemption for JK. Yeah, perfect. All right. Our next storyteller is Kathleen Brown. Kathleen is a Penn Nursing alum who I've had the pleasure of meeting several times through this work. And I'm really excited to bring her on stage and screen. All right, Kathleen, enjoy.
Thank you. In 1978, I completed a master's in nursing from the University of Pennsylvania and became a nurse practitioner in women's health. I took a position in practice with 3 OBGYN medical doctors. That meant I had my own population of female patients to see in the office every day. Our office was directly across the street from the hospital's emergency department. I wanted to work with victims of rape. I wanted to help them in the immediate aftermath of the crime. I had developed helpful skills in my NP program, but there was more to learn. Therefore, I spent time with victims at the Philadelphia Center for Counseling Post-Rape. I spent time at the medical examiner's office learning about types of injuries. I spent time with the forensic psychiatrist who taught me how to write reports for the courts. I spent time with police learning about evidence, and I went to a crime laboratory for information about how to collect evidence properly. After all of that, I felt ready. I got my first call in the middle of the night at about 3 a.m. I was tired and had to start working in the office at 9 a.m. My first thought was, what am I doing? I prepared with new skills and information, but had not considered the time of day when this kind of victimization takes place, most frequently. I got to the hospital quickly and met my first woman in need. Clearly, she was frightened by the appearance of the emergency department. The waiting room was crowded and loud with terribly uncomfortable seating. I took the young lady back to an exam room as quickly as I could. I realized that the first thing to do was reduce her anxiety. We talked for a bit about nothing important, and I offered her a warm blanket she gratefully accepted. I introduced myself and the process. She introduced herself as Patty, a new college graduate working on her very first job. I made sure she was aware that she could ask questions at any time and that she had the power to stop what I was doing at any time. She did use her power to stop the questioning a few times, asking for clarification. I reasoned she'd been through an experience that removed her power completely, and I wanted to give it back. I asked her if she wanted anyone with her for the examination. She said no. Nurses are neutral, unlike the criminal justice system that's very adversarial. I did my best to offer Patty choices as often as possible. For example, do you or do you not want to report this crime to law enforcement? This is a big question that requires patience to navigate. Some women want to report to police and some do not. I stay neutral. The victim decides on the reporting. She seemed to appreciate being given the power to choose, and within 5 minutes, she seemed much more comfortable than she was when I met her in the waiting room. The examination has spots that are uncomfortable, and together we worked through them. She used her power to stop the process a few times, and I acquiesced each time. She required lots of explanations about what I was doing, but was completely cooperative and explained to me, given her control over the procedures, helped her to relax. I was so worried about saying and doing everything perfectly that I was tense. But when she was relaxed, I became relaxed also. We moved through the examination at the pace she set. After the exam came medications to prevent sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy. I promised her this traumatic experience would pass, and she would be strong and well again, and she would feel safe again. She will work through the trauma, I was sure. I referred her for counseling. We hugged again before she left. She cried a little, and so did I, though I did my very best to hide it. I called her the next day just to make sure she didn't have any lingering questions or concerns. She did have questions, and I answered them to the best of my ability. I never saw her again, but I can tell you I wish I had. I wish I could have told her how much the experience meant to me and tell her after our visit I wanted to keep doing this type of work for the rest of my professional life. She moved me from thinking, what am I doing, to thinking, I want to do this for my entire professional life. She proved I can do it, and I can do it well. Flash forward, I've cared for hundreds of women and men who experience rape. I've taught many nurses how to care for victims of rape in the immediate aftermath. I've helped write protocols for many programs, including the one here in Philadelphia. What keeps me going with this type of victimization is the obvious match of the needs to the skills of nursing. Caring, good interviewing skills, assessment skills, and teaching skills are all needed. Nurses keep up to date via education and practice. We're always up to date and always on time. Nurses are neutral compared to the legal system that is not at all. Perhaps most importantly, we lead with our hearts. See the needs and bring our skills to the needs. I continue to help victimized people to this very day. I still believe in 2024, no other profession approaches victimized people with exactly what they need other than nursing. I'm proud to be a nurse and always will be. It's a real wonder. Something that happened in 1978 started a practice that continues to this very day. Patty, wherever you may be, thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Neil and Marion for helping
Kathleen,
me write this.
pleasure to have you and hear this story in a few ways. I cherish these stories that are from early in somebody's long and storied career, we'll say, because it means clearly it means a lot to you as a professional and as a human, but then it means a lot to me as a listener, because I think, gosh, you've got all these things you could be sharing, but this, day one story basically is what you chose to bring to us, and there's so much thought and care behind it and understanding of where you come from. So I'm curious, Kathleen, you've mentored and taught, between 1978 and now. Have you been able to use this story or some version of it along the way, or is this your first time bringing it a little
It's
more
the first
widely?
time putting it together.
Okay.
I've not used it along the way.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that you sat down with me and we figured out some things. And I want to call out specifically something that you mentioned that I find is very wise about working with a patient person like this, which is recognizing the power that they have, right? And being able to negotiate the power between you as the healthcare provider and they as a patient have in that conversation. And so I'm really quite honored in how you described the way that she would stop the conversation and say, I need clarification, or, can we take a pause here? I think that I always say that I learn a lot as a patient and as a family member from these nursing story slams, and I think that's going to be one of my big takeaways today.
It means a great deal to every victim I've seen over the years. Give them back their power.
Exactly.
Because it's been taken.
Great. All right, Kathleen, thank you again for coming on. We'll talk to you.
Very well.
So take care. All right. I'm just going to throw one little comment up. This is from Jamie J. Brunson, Executive Director at First Person Arts. Jamie knows these stories are so amazing. Takes an amazing person to selflessly want to help others, particularly in really frightening moments, right? And it doesn't mean it's necessarily a frightening moment of quite literal danger, but things can be frightening because you're inexperienced, right? I think that's one of the powers of storytelling, is being able to share those. Great. All right. We are going to bring Robbie Alexander to stage. Robbie is at Penn Medicine. Very excited to have her share her story. Take it away, Robbie.
Thanks for being here tonight, everybody. I appreciate that you're all here and listening to the stories that we have to tell. And I don't think you need me to tell you that it's not your fault if you have a mental illness. It's just the way the interplay of genetics and environment worked out for you. So it's bad enough you have a mental illness, but it's even worse if you feel bad about having the illness and the possibility, the very real possibility, that you might need treatment throughout your lifetime. I can't think of anything worse than that, actually. But yeah, it's not true. I can think of something far worse. What if the treatment that we provide for patients with persistent illness actually worsens their sense of internalized shame? And maybe you can't think of how treatment could make somebody feel worse about having a mental illness. So let me introduce you to Kara. Kara is the patient that opened my eyes to the fact that some of the ways we deliver treatment to those with persistent illness can worsen our patients' internalized sense of shame and feelings of failure. So Kara rolls up into the hospital parking lot alone in a decades-old Honda Civic. Her little old car had seen her through her undergraduate degree. It was currently bringing her back and forth to her nursing school clinicals. And now this car was bringing her into inpatient treatment for anorexia nervosa. It was her third treatment in her 27 years. Kara's first question on admission to the unit was, "Hey, will I be able to start my car every day?" As she hands over her car keys and a pair of pliers. She was embarrassed to admit that she had to open the hood of the car to start it and start it with a pair of pliers. And she was even more ashamed that staff was going to have to go out with her like every other day to start this car. But she was really concerned, and rightfully so, that if the car sat in the parking lot too long while she was in the hospital, that she wasn't going to be able to get home, and she had driven quite far from out of state. So, I'm thinking, look at this kid. This is survival skills, man. Good planning, good survival. All right, so that was the first thing. Second thing out of her mouth came from a place of shame and self-deprecation. And she said, this is my third time in treatment already. I might be a failure. So listening more to Kara's story, I could hear a lot of resilience and perseverance. In short, Kara's mom died when she was 11, and she and her sister, who was of about the same age, banded together and supported one another through adolescence and through early adulthood. They had very few resources and very little support. Not coincidentally, Kara's eating disorder started after the death of her mother, so she was 11 years old. The more she talked, the more I struggled with, I want to take care of this kid. I was listening to her, but I also had like one eye fixed on the clouds out of the window. We were on the 5th story, and I was saying to myself, as I was kind of listening to her, okay, Robbie, you know you're falling hard. This dead mother story gets you every time. And I was thinking that's probably a flashback from childhood to Bambi or Heidi, where the mothers are gone and the child is bereft. Then I continued the argument, and it was, I know I'm falling, but look at her. Look at how awesome this beautiful little kid is. And then my brain screams, hey, hello. She's 27 years old. She's not a kid. And then I thought, but look at how hard she tries in spite of this crummy illness. And look at how much she's able to get for herself with so little to lean on. So I figured, you know what? Transference be damned. I need to listen to her, and I'm going to listen to my heart on this one, and screw it. I jumped in to partner with her in treatment, and I was in it up to my eyeballs. Look at all she'd accomplished in her life with the weight of an eating disorder on her tiny little back. And believe me when I tell you, yes, she was tiny. That was another thing that made me feel like she was a kid. She was physically tiny. She hadn't developed very much since her mother died. She hadn't really developed beyond her pre-adolescent size and shape. So why should this beautiful, determined kid feel like she's a failure because she hadn't gotten rid of her eating disorder during the first 2 treatments? And I started to wonder, do we set patients up to believe that if they follow our program perfectly, that they'll get rid of their anorexia forever. And if they don't get rid of it, that it's their fault, they did something wrong, they didn't follow the prescription exactly correctly. Is it even a possibility that every patient with anorexia nervosa is going to be able to walk away from their illness and never experience symptoms again? So my mind was really spinning at this point about how our accepted standard treatment for anorexia, especially the goal of discharge at 85% ideal body weight, might be adding an additional burden to this tiny little weary body. Never in this child's life had she been the size of an adult female, let alone 85% of that size. So why would we expect her to be able to do that now successfully? So again, I thought, you know what? Screw it again. Let's figure something else out that could work for this kid. What else could work? So the question in my mind became really obvious. Why can't we support our patients' attempts at perseverance with the same vigor that we devote to restoring weight and focusing on numbers? All right, so all this struggle going on in my head, it's good to have a team of colleagues that can kind of help you sort this out. So as a group, our first question became, all right, so who are we to challenge the accepted standard treatment for anorexia nervosa and do something different and not focus on weight restoration as heavily? So we thought, who are we? I mean, why not us? Why not us, since there's no real tried and true cures for severe and enduring anorexia? Again, if we know that, why can't our patients know that? Because the truth really is that we don't know everything, and our patients should be allowed to know that we don't know everything. So because of our realizations around CARA, we developed a new protocol for the treatment of severe and enduring anorexia. The new protocol is currently being tested against treatment as usual, the standard treatment, in an IRB-approved clinical trial. The study's now 3 years old, so I'm thinking CARA's probably 30, 31 years old by now. Our new protocol never abandons hope for recovery. We always hope that people can recover. However, we will not shame people if they don't remain asymptomatic after treatment. Does this new protocol work better than standard treatment? It's too soon to tell. Don't think it's worse, but there is one thing that we can tell you about our new protocol, and that's that our patients are less likely to avoid treatment because of shame, and they're more likely to come in for help before they're forced in because of the fact they're on death's doorstep. So at this point in my career, it seems to me that maybe it's okay to say screw it and let some patients get in under our skin sometimes. And yeah, CARA's car did start on discharge. And the word on the street is that she, and I don't know, maybe even her car, I don't know what happened to the car, but she did definitely graduate nursing school. And she got her nursing license almost 3 years to the day from the day she described herself as a failure to me. Somehow, wherever this kiddo is in her life's journey, I hope that she knows there's a treatment team in Princeton that's doing the happy dance. Thanks so much for listening to my story. I appreciate it.
Oh, Robbie, love that. Love the story and being a part of your journey with it. You raised something really interesting close to the end that obviously connects to the through line, which is patients are less likely to avoid treatment due to shame. And I think shame is a really interesting phenomenon that we probably can't really measure very well. Would you say this was the first time that you understood the power of shame in treatment, or was this one of many? Tell me more.
This is a problem that has bothered me my entire career in behavioral health, psychiatric mental health nursing. It's not bad enough that these illnesses break apart families. They strip people of the very things that give us quality of life, and then they have to feel bad about having it. And the bottom line is, Neil, there really aren't cures for these things. It's not like antibiotics. You can take them and get rid of an infection. We can manage symptoms and we can treat symptoms. But people are going to relapse, and it's not going to be anybody's fault, but yet they feel like it is. So rather than come in when they need treatment, they white knuckle it for one more day. Tomorrow's going to be better. I'm going to do the right thing tomorrow. I'm going to do what they told me in that treatment program tomorrow. And it just becomes a spiral. And shame, I wish shame was a motivator. It's not. Shame is a barrier to treatment. It is not a good motivator to stay well.
Yeah. Appreciate that. It's one of those messages that it's like, if this helped one person here tonight, or if that's a tagline that somebody remembers and brings on further out. And obviously some people watching have a deep understanding of behavioral health from the clinical practice side. Others may have an experience from the clinical side, but experiencing it themselves and again as family members. So I'm really pleased that you were able to bring in this perspective to tonight's Story Slam. All right, Bobby, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciated the opportunity.
Yeah. Just to highlight one more from Nancy Blumenthal. We evaluate patients by our parameters rather than theirs. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to describe it, and something that many of us can think about when we're considering metrics across the board. All right, let's see here. Moving on in my notes, our next storyteller is a Penn Nursing graduate student. I'm really pleased that you're going to hear a story from Zafar Anwar tonight. Zafar, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this amazing event. Illegal immigrant, undocumented, unauthorized. Growing up here, I had heard these terms in the news, on television, from people, but I would have never described myself like that, although fate had other plans. My parents immigrated from Pakistan in the late 90s to New York to secure a better life for us as a family. After their unexpected demise in the early 2000s, my brothers and I had the insurmountable task to continue life in our new home. Hardships weren't new to us as a family. We come from a lower middle class background, which meant your resources were limited, but you made the most out of it. My parents, eternal optimists, instilled in us a sense of hope, goodwill, and gratitude, no matter what the circumstances. But this was new territory for us siblings. Alone, terrified, and a profound loss gripped us all. But we persevered. Our country's immigration law has always been vast and complex. So as a 19-year-old, navigating its intricacies was daunting, to say the least. I found out that as my father was the primary visa holder for the family, my visa wasn't going to be valid moving forward. I asked if there were any alternative pathways to reinstate my visa, and the answer was no. So there I was, a 19-year-old nursing student, aspiring to be a nurse and wishing for the opportunity to serve my patients. And all my dreams were shattered. I was put in removal proceedings, an immigration process whereby you are assigned an immigration judge to oversee your case as you are set to be deported from the country. While still in the process of being deported, my immigration lawyer made a plea that an exception should be made in my instance due to my mitigating circumstances and good conduct. He told me, it might not be enough, but we will see on our court date. I got out of my lawyer's office thinking, did I do something wrong? Why is this happening to me? I felt defeated. After 2 years and countless sleepless nights, there I was in immigration court, I imagine it to be like an episode of Law and Order or Judge Judy, but it wasn't like that at all. I walked into a shabby, rundown room. The carpet was dark brown and old. Looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. The chairs and tables creaked as I sat next to my lawyer. In front of me was the immigration judge, a stenographer, and a security officer. On my left was the lawyer representing the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I was told to take the stand, so I got up and sat next to the judge. A Quran was given to me to swear on, which is normal procedure. And I listened attentively to the arguments made for and against me to staying in this country. After much deliberation, the judge turned to me and said, "Mr. Anwar, I have reviewed your documents and your files. I can see all your time in this country. You have continued your education and recently graduated from nursing school at Hunter College. You have no past misdemeanors or any warrants against you. So I will grant you withholding from removal. You can stay in this country." I heard that and for a second didn't believe it. I felt as if I was in a dream, watching myself going through an experience such as this. I turned to the judge and politely said, "Thank you," and walked towards my lawyer. I don't think, obviously it wasn't real, but I still saw that my parents were sitting there, and I can see them smiling at me as I just, feeling this sense of accomplishment. So there I was, all my aspirations, my career, my life, may be a reality. And here I stand in front of you, living my dream. Thank you.
Zafar, so nicely done. I'm really glad everybody got to hear this tonight. One of the ways that I talk about this event is how the themes are exemplified in such very different ways, right? I think probably many people attending tonight didn't realize that they were going to learn about diabetes as well as immigration law, right, in the span of a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And Zafar, you've just really painted a beautiful picture of this. I know a little bit about your path kind of after that point. Can you tell everybody a little more about how you have used this experience to lead and mentor those kind of junior to you?
Yes, thank you for that question. So I actually recently submitted an abstract for the National Association of Hispanic Nurses. So I've been part of the National Association of Hispanic Nurses for about 14 years now. And throughout the years, I've mentored a plethora of people who've been through similar experiences as I am when it comes to immigration and how to navigate nursing school while going through that. But this came about last year at our national conference where there was questions about, people. So I don't necessarily advertise that I'm a CRNA. I think that, it's just one of those things that I know I am, and I know it becomes like a conversation of, oh, how did you get into school? What did you do? And then it's one of those things. But people came up to me, and then when they heard my story, they were very intrigued by it. So I was like, you know what, this is a good time to actually share my stories and actually talk about my experiences. And so hopefully that abstract gets accepted and I'll be able to present that at our national conference in Atlanta this year.
Lovely. Yeah, great. Love to hear that. Let me know how that goes.
Thank you.
All right, Zafar, thanks so much for this. It's been a real pleasure working with you. All right, and folks, we're nearing the end here, but it's not all over yet. Our final storyteller for the evening, before we have a couple other comments, our final storyteller is a Penn Nursing graduate student who's now at Penn Medicine. Please welcome to the stage, Jackie Robb.
Thanks so much. So, taking on complicated challenges is my jam. I started my nursing journey by applying to 14 accelerated nursing programs. And after graduating with my BSN, my first nursing job was on a locked neuroscience unit at one of Penn's downtown hospitals. And then I started graduate school. No cakewalk. Fast forward a decade, and I'm somehow still here. But now I find myself spending more time watching the Great British Bake Off between virtual meetings and putting my kids to bed. And if you're not familiar with GBBO, basically picture a tent in the middle of England where bakers from all over the UK compete in different baking competitions. So bread, cake, pastries, commentary, and jokes. So the show has 3 challenges. The first is the signature challenge, which basically the contestants can show off their baking skills. The second challenge is the technical. So that tests their expertise and knowledge, where each baker is given the same recipe and then they are ranked worst to best. And then the showstopper, of course. That's where the bakers get to show off their skills, their creativity, and talent. And each week, one baker is then sent home and one wins star baker, and then on until there's a winner. There's something really wonderful about watching the bakers make something so beautiful and delicious that brings me back to my days hanging with my grandmother, Lilia, in her kitchen while she'd bake. My grandmother was an engineer by trade, one of the few women at her company in a job like that. Also, an immigrant from the former Soviet Union, and she had a master's degree. She also was an excellent baker. Her favorite show to watch was Ina Garten, of course. She even kept a recipe book where we'd print out recipes, and she'd always be working on a yummy treat for all of us to enjoy. Me, a baker? Not so much. I'm actually really good at eating baked goods and definitely have the guilty pleasure of watching baking and cooking shows. But I'm a nurse. We like treats. So for tonight, I'm fortunate to share my story of my grandmother, who not only introduced me to delicious treats, but also motivated me to persevere, no matter what the challenge was. So one afternoon, when I was in my first nurse manager role in the epilepsy center at Penn, I got a call that my grandmother was complaining about eye discomfort. So I quickly FaceTimed with her, and the neuroscience nurse in me was like, this looks like an emergency. And at this moment, I officially stepped into the role of directing my grandmother's care, running the show. Ready, set, bake. Over a span of 2 hours, I had picked up my grandmother, drove her to the HUP ED, communicated with our family, assisted transport upon arrival. I knew everybody that worked there, got her on from the car to the stretcher, answered all the questions from the emergency and neurology teams. All of this felt like we were gathering ingredients for our signature challenge with skill and determination. Being with her in that triage room felt like the next technical challenge, where I had to both be her advocate, but also a nurse to understand what's happening, from the scans she was getting to discussing the plans to admit her. And without a doubt, she was going to be transferred to the unit I used to work on as a nurse. This mix of ingredients plus the incredibly skilled clinical team that I knew so well equaled trust, and trust that she was going to get the best care. Those 2 nights in the intermediate neuroscience care unit felt like our showstopper. I stayed by her side through the nicardipine drips, the scans, the neuro checks, all those ingredients to support her through her recovery from a hemorrhagic stroke. I also brought treats for the clinical team, not baked by me. It was my way of showing love and appreciation. So eventually, with her hard work recovering, support of the neurology team, PTOT, and of course the nurses, we got her to where she could move out of the unit to rehab and eventually back home. Caring and supporting her through her recovery brought me back to my former bedside nursing days and really gave me a better appreciation for the profession and how, as nurses, we persevere every day. We strive to go above and beyond on the call of duty, consistently aiming to excel, like winning the title of Star Baker. So just as a baker refines their cake recipe through trial and error, my nursing leadership journey involved overcoming challenges that shaped me into a stronger, more capable leader. And just as how we as nurses, we begin our career as novices, and then over time we evolved into these seasoned experts. And I know my grandmother would be so proud knowing I'm finishing my DNP this year to ensure everyone gets the same level of care that she received. And in her honor, I hope you all go eat a really delicious pastry. Thank you.
Oh, Jackie, what an ending. Oh, that's the kind of thing that like this weekend I'm going to be eating a pastry and I'm like, Jackie's grandmother, you know? Yeah. Wonderful piece. I know that this isn't your first time telling a story with a first person arts event. And if I could just kind of peel back the process a little bit, what was it like putting this story together for you?
Oh, it was really great. And I will say I was hesitant if I wanted to run it by other people. And, I tell lots of stories, those that know me. Sometimes I have to kind of like stop telling my stories.
Believe me, I'm
but
familiar. Yep.
yeah, of course. But I, my grandmother's always, in the back of my mind, and anybody that has, different family members and, different experiences that they've had to kind of step into these weird roles. It just, really resonated with me, like perseverance. And I'm like, oh yeah, like she was really one of those kind of people. And then I'm like, oh, why am I eating so many treats and watching these shows? And so it kind of like all came together in this like beautiful, kind of recipe. So trial and error, right? You kind of practice, you live and learn. And it did bring me back to my, days back in the day when I did the StorySlam, that, kind of practicing and, having to really be able to express what you're trying to, show and what your experience was. So it was, it was fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm glad you joined us again. Like I said, this one's going to stick with me like all the others. So great. All right, Jackie, thank you so much. Folks, just a couple of things before I wrap up my portion. Want to mention a couple of things First Person Arts has coming up. On Saturday, March 16th, First Person Arts is teaming up with Mural Arts for a powerful collaborative storytelling performance called Embracing the Light. These shows will feature local storytellers with lived experience with suicide, including those who've experienced suicide ideation, made attempts, or lost loved ones. Tickets will go on sale soon, so be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at firstpersonarts.org. And the other thing I want to tell you about is our next Story Slam. The theme is Sorry, Not Sorry. It's March 26th at World Cafe Live. Join our host, Betty Smithsonian, who is Philly's award-winning goof and all-around awesome comedian. That's another great bio to share. March 26th at 8 p.m. Again, firstpersonarts.org will have all your information. Yeah, and just before I go, I just want to say huge amounts of gratitude. Thank you so much to Penn Nursing, Penn Medicine, my dear friend and colleague, Marion Leary, Kelli Dunham, all of our fantastic storytellers. Thanks to our technician, Amir Bay Richardson. Fabulous working with him. And to learn more about First Person Arts, follow us on social media at First Person Arts. Marion, the stage is yours, my friend.
Neil, every year, these storytellers, they just get me. You all can't imagine how much work went into these stories and how often they changed and grew over the past few weeks. I'm seriously so proud and so inspired by all of our storytellers. I hope these stories inspired all of you and encourage you to be more persistent in your daily lives. Before we close, our Dean of Penn Nursing, Dean Tony Villarreal, would like to say a few words. Dean Tony?
Great. Thanks, Marion, for that. And again, thank you to our storytellers for being courageous, vulnerable, and inspiring. Thank you to Kelli Dunham. I was surprised. I wanted to laugh. I'm not sure I laughed a whole lot, but I was certainly touched by your story. Madeline, just so proud of you as a student for your story. Alfredo, touched by your story of survival. Kathleen Teresi, I haven't seen you in a long time. We used to teach together. I've always been inspired by your dedication to kids, and that story, again, just really struck me. Kathleen Brown, you know I'm a fan because you are such a leader and so compassionate, and it's good to see where that came from. Robbie, thank you for not only showing your perseverance, but also your compassion and innovation and how you care for people with eating disorders. Zafar, thank you for reminding us that immigration is a social determinant of health and for sharing that story. And Jackie, as soon as this is done, I'm going to go out and eat something sweet. I'm going to take your advice. Neil, as always, thank you for your partnership, and everyone at First Person Arts for, again, making this such a treasured part of our Penn Nursing repertoire. And I want to thank Sandy Sandberg and Joe Sandberg for their generosity in making this possible. So if anybody asks and wonders why are we the #1 ranked school of nursing in the world for the 8th consecutive year, all they need to do is to tune in and to see our outstanding students, our wonderful faculty, our partners who are our alums, and our supporters here. So I'm just so proud to be dean of this school, and so proud that I get to work every day with such phenomenal people. Our nursing community is a critical support, but it goes further than that. Storytelling, as we witnessed today, helps others outside our community understand what nursing is and what we do in a way that's sometimes hard for us to tell. Tonight's moving and inspiring stories help everyone understand the fortitude it takes to be a nurse, even in the face of unimaginable barriers. And you also share the rewards that come from the work that we do. So again, thank you to our storytellers tonight for demonstrating our theme tonight so perfectly. Thank you to all for joining us. Marion, as always, thank you for your innovation, for your spirit, and for your creativity in all you do. And for everyone, especially all those Texans, I'm not sure why all the Texans came, but welcome. I urge you to stay connected to Penn Nursing from our website and newsletters to find out about our exciting upcoming events. And so for tonight, I hope you enjoyed our 5th Story Slam. We were all inspired. Thank you, and have a good evening.
All right, and with that, I will just say, nurses, please keep telling your stories. The world needs to hear them now more than ever. Thank you all, and good night.